really enjoyed getting to meet many of you and talk with you, and I know those that I haven't met with yet, I hope to real soon. And so my hope is, I know pretty much everybody on this call knows each other, but it would be really helpful for me if we could just do a quick round of introductions. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what brings you to this work, and I'll actually turn over to Adrian to introduce herself and help me navigate working around the room.
Hi, everyone. Adrian Perkins, Administrative Assistant to OMMIR. It's really great to see everyone today. So I'll go ahead. I'm just going to go off of my screen. Joel, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you very much. I think I've had a chance to meet most of you. My name is Joel Maleka. I'm the Legislative Liaison for the Department of Public Safety. Just been engaged in a number of conversations around how we've been able to create the office and in the legislation that's really guiding the work that we're doing, and just glad to be part of the conversation. So I'll turn it over to the next person.
I think Paula, you're next on my screen.
Hello, everyone. I'm Paula. I'm OMMIR's PIO. Most of the media information will come out from me. Thank you for having me here, and looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts and opinions.
Good morning, Raven, again.
Thanks, Adrian. Bonjour and Danoe Maganaguk. Hello of my relatives. I am Raven Payment. I am the co-chair of the Denver American Indian Commission, and I am also a member of the MMIR Task Force of Colorado. I helped work on some of the initial legislation that established the Office of MMIR, so I'm familiar with a lot of faces, and it's good to see everyone. So I'm done. Thanks. Hi.
Kirby.
Good morning. My name is Kirby Lewis. I'm an assistant director with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation overseeing the Denver office. I was stationed in Durango for a number of years, 13 years, and worked a number of crimes impacting Indigenous individuals and communities. And it's just such an important work, and I'm glad to be here to be a part of this.
Morning again, Debbie.
Morning, everyone. It's good to see everyone again. Debbie Oldenettle. I'm the Deputy Director for DCJ, and I appreciate everyone joining this call that was unscheduled prior to our next call in November, and look forward to hearing from all of you. So thanks for being here.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Medina. I'm Chief of Staff for the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. I work with Kirby, and just echoing the statements of everybody on the call today, that very honored to be here, and just ready and willing to help in any way possible.
Hi, Philip.
Sorry about that. I'm currently driving, so I'm just going to keep it to the microphone. My name is Phil Gover. I'm Pawnee and Choctaw. I'm currently work for Colorado Department of Human Services as a Tribal Affairs Specialist, and I know a number of people on here, but I appreciate you all setting this meeting after what we need to talk about. Thank you.
Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Rick Waters. I'm Kiowa Cherokee, director of the Denver Indian Center, and I always say that we often represent the crossroads of Indian country, not over here in Colorado, but and Denver specifically. But happy to be a part of this. And when I say comprehensively, you know, if there's an issue, question, and coming from the Native community, the general public, or whatever, and they Google it, generally the Denver Indian Center is where they call. So we tend to be the go-to place for, or at least in many cases, the start for inquiries about Native activities and issues.
Thank you. Daniel?
Good morning, Daniel Stoyer, Senior Assistant Attorney General. I am also the Tribal Liaison for the Department of Law. I'm the Attorney General's appointee to the board. I was selected by the Attorney General quite some time ago, but somehow I fell through the cracks. So this is my first time attending any board meeting. Thank you.
Well, welcome. Good morning, Jennifer.
I'm Seneca and Mohawk, and
I don't know if it's just me, but Jennifer, we can't hear you.
I think she's going to put some stuff in chat as her introduction. Sorry, Jennifer. Mesky.
Good morning, everyone. Yat E Shikedo Shidene. My name is Miski Sotal Yatsati. I am Kiowa, Potawatomi, Guachichil, Mexican, and Dene. I run Navajo Nation Missing Persons Updates, grassroots organization. Also am a founding member of Missing and Murdered Dene Relatives that Council Delegate Amber Crotty created and founded back in 2019. And among other things, I'm a mom of 3 and a wife. So thank you for having me.
Nancy?
Donjo, I'm Nancy Ray. I'm Apache, so I'm Southeastern Athabascan, more modernly known as the Jicarilla Apache Nation. I am the founding co-founder of Herbal Gardens Wellness and also a medical clinician specializing in pediatrics. Thank you.
Thank you. Coraline? I think you're mute. Oh, good.
Okay. Good morning. I guess we're doing like reintroductions again. Because Julia did.
This is the first time Matt's joined us.
Okay. All right. So my name's Coraline Tapoof, and I am from the Uinta and RA Indian Reservation here in Utah. I am just a community member on our reservation. And so I'm just happy to be a part of the board. I also had to submit an application, and they asked for like if you were from the state of Colorado. My father, his band, the White Rivers, originally came from Colorado. And so I just feel that it would just be an honor to at least do something for my father's band, to be a part of this organization, to try to help Native American people. We've had one lady, Deborah Jones, that is also a part of this board, and she expressed some stuff that she had gone through, and it was really traumatic with what she had to share. And so I feel that even though we may go through stuff, there's always that pain that's always there lingering. And so you kind of have to find a way to help people to mend mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of this organization.
Thank you for being here.
Okay.
Good morning, Monica.
My name is Monica Snowbird. I am the program director for the Hesea Advocate Program in Colorado Springs, and I am also one of the founding members of the MMIR Task Force of Colorado that helped her introduce this legislation that brought us all here today, including Raven. She downplays how awesome she is sometimes, but so we work together a lot, and just thankful to be here.
We're glad to have you as well. Good morning, Lorenda. Is Raven with you as well?
Good morning. No, Raven is actually on, she's on maternity leave. She just had a new little girl. So otherwise she would be on here. My name is Lorinda Morgan. I am with the Cheyenne Arapaho tribes. I am Cheyenne Arapaho and Oto Missouri. I work as the governmental affairs officer for the Cheyenne Arapaho tribes. I am also a founder of the Cheyenne Arapaho MMIP chapter, and we've done a lot of things here in Oklahoma with MMIP, MMIR. Raven Morgan, who's not on today, she is also works for the Cheyenne Arapaho tribe. She's my daughter. She's enrolled with the Pawnee Nation. And she is also very active in the MMIP community, and she works as an education counselor for the Cheyenne Arapaho tribes. So we're both very involved in MMIP, and we're just so honored to be on this board, especially with the Cheyenne Arapaho tribes. We're kind of our ancestral lands were there in Colorado. The tribe worked very hard to do the renaming for the Mount Evans to Mount Blue Sky. So our tribe is very involved in the state of Colorado. So I just wanted to say thank you and welcome to Matt. And yeah, I'm honored to be on this board. Thank you.
We'll pass on our congratulations to Raven.
Well, thank you so much.
Carla? I thought I just saw her, but we can come back, Carla. Christinia? Oh, there you are, Carla.
Oh, sorry. My name is Carla Respects Nothing. I'm Oglala Lakota. Okay, wash day and choose up Midakiabi. Good to see you all today, my relatives. I would just shake their hands all the way around. Thanks for having me. I'm currently working as a health navigator for Herbal Gardens Wellness. Currently at the Gathering Place, the women's shelter and transgender and family day shelter here in Denver. I'm currently doing our Native American Women's Talking Circle. They're actually patiently waiting for me to get on mute. So yeah, just doing that, supporting our Native community. Other than that, good to see you all, and I am just here to listen. Thank you.
Good to see you as well. Christinia?
Hello, everybody. My name is Christinia Ayala. I'm a Sichangu Lakota, and also, I knew I was going to do this. My father's from the Philippine Islands, so I'm Ilocano Filipino. And let's see, I live in Fort Collins. I have a small nonprofit. It's called Teoshbe Wiyamaka, which is the Lakota language for, oh dear, extended family of women of the earth. And I also, I have partnered with several organizations that I think are really important to the work that I do. I am with I work with the Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition that we're in Colorado Springs, and I work with women who have suffered a historical trauma, help them understand that it was trauma, not their fault. Then we go into grieving and then finally healing. And I'm also connected to the permaculture world because I think that natural medicine is so much better than anything else. Well, that's it. Thank you. Nice to be here. Oh, and I wanted to ask a quick question. So a friend of mine, Shane Patterson, really wanted to be here today, and he couldn't because he works for the city, and they were having a meeting, and he's supposed to do a presentation there. And I'm wondering if there were any more board openings. He's really interested in that. So he wanted me to mention that.
I can reach out to you after the meeting
Oh, good.
about the openings, if that would work.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you.
Of course, not a problem. Nancy?
I already went.
Oh, you must have left and then come back. So I just wanted to give you a second opportunity, I guess. So since that's everybody, we're so glad that you're here, and I will turn it back over to Matt.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time. I know it does take time away from our discussion, but it's really important to me that I get to know a little bit about you. And as we move forward, I hope to learn more and continue the conversation. I'm new to this space. I came over from Denver, and a lot of the work that I did in Denver focused on working with nonprofits and community members to try and improve both short and long-term outcomes for everyone that called Denver home. And so I'm just really excited to be here, excited to learn from all of you and find ways that we can further engage to continue moving this important work forward. So I sent out an email yesterday afternoon, kind of giving a semi-structure to the conversation for today. So I just wanted to go over and get a sense from you all, kind of where we're at right now, what's working, not just with OMMIR or the advisory board, but just the community as a whole, where you see opportunities for continued improvement and growth and collaboration. And then I'm really hoping to end the conversation today with any current events or initiatives that you think are important for the good of the group. And really one of the things I like to end meetings on too is sharing and celebrating events. So hearing about the birth of a new child is very exciting. So we've checked that one off the list. But anything else that people would like to share with the group to help build community, I would love to hear about. So let's start off with kind of where we're at right now. And for my benefit, as someone new to this group, what has been working as far as getting the board up and running and having these collaborations and conversations? What's been working across the state? How do you all see that? Are there things related to these initial meetings that you all have found helpful? I know we've just kind of gotten started. I think there's been a couple board meetings to date. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're right, Matt. We are fairly new, and I've been working, in mental health and different things like that. So, and I usually get people after they've been traumatized, and help them work through that. But what I would like is more in person. If we can't, I like in person, some in person training around how do we put groups together to go to a family who maybe has a missing relative or child, and I just would like to have some training about that. How it begins, where it ends after that part of it is done.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I'm hearing you correctly, I hear kind of two things there. One is that you would like more in-person interaction with the group, and the other is training on additional resources and understanding the process when we do have. Okay, that's great feedback. Have there been previous conversations about holding at least one of the meetings, maybe one of the quarterly meetings in person? What are people's thoughts on that? I know the Google Meet platform allows for maybe more availability, but I also understand the importance of being in the same space together. How do other people think about that?
Hi, Matt. This is Misky. It might be a little difficult for me I live out in New Mexico, so that may be a little challenging just for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know we're kind of from all over the state and in the region, and so that does present some unique challenges. One of the things that I have wanted to work on is going out more and being present with you all. So one thing that I would put out to the group, and I've extended this to some of you already, is I would love to come down to where you are and have a conversation and understand your experience. So I'd like to put that out. On the other issue that was brought up related to training and understanding the process and the roles of different individuals involved in this process, what are thoughts from the group on what training is currently out there to help people understand what can be a complex process, and what would people like to see moving forward that they think would be helpful for the community?
I think there needs to be specific training regarding the bills. We shouldn't just necessarily assume that because everyone is on the advisory committee that they understand the ins and outs of both of the MMIR bills that have been passed. So maybe a comprehensive kind of walkthrough of those steps and the roles of this advisory board. This board will not be meeting with families in an advocate role. So when we're talking about potential trainings, we need to kind of keep that in mind. Keep the training specific to what the board's scope of work is going to be. And if you are looking for advocate type trainings, there's one going on here in Colorado Springs from the National Tribal Training Institute this week. I mean, they're going on constantly. Raven and I are working with, and our task force are working with law enforcement and district attorney's office to develop additional trainings regarding MMIR as a crisis. But as far as advocacy, because this group will not be meeting with families, maybe we can be better about distributing information on other advocate trainings that are going on across the state and across the region. A lot of them are available online that are pretty accessible. Some are free, some do have costs associated with them. But I think really the responsibilities of this board and going over the ins and outs of the bill and what has been passed and what we still need to work on for potential additional legislation, because there are things that are not currently working with the two bills that we've passed.
Okay, that's great feedback. It'd be interesting, and I know Joel, I believe, is on the call. It'd be interesting if maybe Joel and somebody from the advocacy community that helped kickstart these legislative initiatives could maybe tag team that to provide maybe a little bit broader perspective on the bills. As far as getting information out about what resources are currently available and trainings are currently available, I think that's an amazing idea. Would you be willing, Monica, to share some of those resources with us, with Adrian and I, and brainstorm ways in which we can make those resources more readily available for the public beyond just the board?
Yeah, we'll send them. I'll send some resources to you in an email today.
Okay, that'd be great. What other things would people find helpful in the training space beyond legislation or accessing advocacy trainings that are already publicly available?
Hi, Matt. This is Lorinda. When I think about training, as far as, what our role is on the advisory board, I would recommend maybe looking at providing just some general information, like a general training, or maybe holding some type of, I don't know how many regions you have there in Colorado as far as for law enforcement, because one of the things that I think families are impacted by is their interactions with law enforcement when their family member goes missing. And that's something that many law enforcement agents, as far as, we talk about a lot of times about tribal and state jurisdiction. But beyond that, there's other types of jurisdictions, such as you have city,
Yep.
you have counties, you have, the state law enforcement bodies. Because I know here in Oklahoma, they talk about, the tribal and state jurisdictions, how they have, they clash a lot. But I will tell you, we have counties in Oklahoma that clash that have nothing to do with tribal jurisdiction, about law enforcement crossing certain boundaries, arresting people, pulling people over. So there's a lot of jurisdictional issues that are just, don't have anything to do with tribal. But when you add these type of things in, I think it's good to just have a reminder, or even just something out there for law enforcement within, city, county, to say, hey, maybe at the state level, we're going to have this, provide this training. And, if you're interested in learning more about, missing and murdered Indigenous people, what that means, and then also coordinate and collaborate. This office could collaborate with the BIA, because that's another big part of, tribal jurisdiction. You want to make sure that, even if it's just a Zoom, you could do Zoom training for law enforcement and have the BIA come in and talk about, what their role is. If you have already some law enforcement agencies that are, on the up and up with missing and murdered Indigenous people, I'm sure there's some out there. Not every entity is going to be knowledgeable, but you might have some, law enforcement officers out there who do know. And you might want to pull them in to speak or to present, and just have them, maybe a family member, make it a 1 hour Zoom, or just something informational for law enforcement. I mean, that's what I would recommend, because, for us to be coming to these meetings, and I think that, we want to make sure that we're being impactful. We want to make sure that we're helping you to get moving on what your office needs to do. And I think that would be good, is to first and foremost, just for, since we're talking about training, maybe think about having that type of training, doing a Zoom for the officers all across the state.
No, I think that's a great idea. I know Colorado Post, which certifies all peace officers in the state, has a training. I think there's opportunities to continue to expand that. And I love your idea of bringing in BIA and sharing personal stories. And because look, I come from local law enforcement. I'm not I've never been a police officer, but I do come from local law enforcement. And so I certainly understand the jurisdictional issues and some of those challenges. And this is new, right, for many of them, and understanding the MIPA process, or understanding how to better work within these spaces. And so I think that's a wonderful suggestion. And I think that this board could really help us build out what that collaboration should look like. And from your all's lived experience and lived experience of your relatives, what would be most important for you as the receiver of those services from law enforcement? What would be most helpful? Christina, did you have another comment?
No, I actually didn't. That was somebody else. Okay.
I do have another thing that I wanted to kind of point out, was that, one of the things too that I think is really important, and because I don't want to assume that all law enforcement are culturally competent as far as, Native customs and the sensitivities regarding, missing and murdered, or if a family member has to be contacted by law enforcement, and just a certain way that, tribal citizens, how they, we're a little bit different as far as customs, tribal customs, and then there's different tribes and different ways of doing things. So I think it's good to have an important reminder to law enforcement as well, that there is maybe to have a little portion of a future training on cultural competency, on cultural sensitivity training, because that's something that we're kind of pushing here for Oklahoma. I've talked to many law enforcement agencies, and we've also, this might be an idea for you all. We recently had a missing persons day where we worked with the Oklahoma Medical Examiner's Office, the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, different law enforcement agencies came together. And what we did on that day was we had a day for, it was for MMIP, but also we opened it up to everybody to where they could come and, for anybody that had a missing person, for them to come and give DNA samples and to make sure that they had the forms filled out for their loved one to make sure they were listed in NamUs. And so that might be something to also, if you guys haven't already done that in Colorado, to make, that might be a good idea of something to plan for the future, to a collaboration to make sure that all the tribal members there in Colorado, if they have a missing loved one, that they give that DNA sample and they have that on site. And so that if there are any, if anything comes up in the future, or if there's any unidentified remains, they can be checked to make sure to find, to help find missing persons.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Monica mentioned it in the chat. I know CBI has worked on this previously, and I think it's something that we can continue to look at, ways that we can make those services available. Colorado is unique too in that you mentioned Oklahoma. Oklahoma has a centralized state medical examiner system, but it would be interesting to engage the Colorado Coroners Association, because each county has their own elected coroner, and share this information with them as well. I remember working with tribes when I was I worked in the state of Iowa for a number of years, quite a while ago, and we did a lot of trainings around cultural competency issues as it related to investigations of decedents. So great suggestion, and I think that's another group that we could reach out to continue to build those coalitions, that information sharing. Are there other training issues before we move off of that point that people would like to raise to put on the radar for future opportunities?
I think perhaps an open communication with the peace officer standards training. We've had a number of victim advocates from law enforcement agencies reach out to the task force just in terms of having a hard time understanding how to present information that they are not from, because there are non-Indigenous people presenting this cultural awareness portion to law enforcement, and they've had some hiccups with that as well, even in terms of them not feeling like they're empowered to speak on that, which I tend to agree with. But in any case, perhaps that's something the board could take up in helping facilitate some of those just heartburn that they're having right now with that training.
Yeah, absolutely. Great feedback. Any other training issues or ideas? What's working right now in the community as a whole, right? Not just the OMMIR office or the task force. What do you think is working really well in Colorado that we could elevate or that we could help expand or build off of?
Well, I think visibility is an issue. We have 106,000 members in Denver and the 7 county areas, but we probably have contact with maybe around 6,000 known to within interagency within the nonprofit organization structure. I think that part of what happens with our people going missing is that a lot of times people assume that we are immigrants or from other countries due to the historical narrative. And I think that discussing some type of PA that could be done mutually with, to Raven's point, cultural competency, and to Monica's point, that would include a lot of different nations that are here that have have a need to be seen and heard. The more we're kept invisible within the state, well, the state has done a great job on LGBTIQ issues. They've done a great job on immigration issues. They're starting to come around on the houseless relatives. I think that visibility overall for our people is something that needs to be discussed at the state level, and some assistance. We've been working with Rocky Mountain PBS in terms of having some positive narratives shared, but I think that the state needs to do a better job of discussing that we have both historical tribes, we have federally recognized tribes, we have tribes like mine who did not go to the reservation and do not follow the American way of life. You know, there needs to be some discussion and some visibility around our people. As long as it's silent, there just seems to be a blinder on when it comes to this issue. And so it's great that law enforcement's being trained, but some type of preventative or protective measure creating visibility is where I think we need to go. And I would invite Monica or Raven to comment on that. They usually have a good redirect or a good support, something to say, and they're very valuable in that, in the fact that they're the ones who've sacrificed a lot of their time. And I know they don't see it that way, but they've given a lot of their time to not only the legislation, but to the day-to-day going out and searching and being there in Colorado Springs and Denver. Monica, Raven, do you guys have any ideas about visibility for the community?
You can't see me because my camera's off. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Monica. I'll be quiet.
No, you won't. I think visibility is getting better. I think a lot of organizations and agencies are at a surface level trying to be more inclusive of Native folks, but I think sometimes it's on an after the fact kind of policy, like, oh, we have this group of people, oh, we forgot a Native, let's go get a Native somewhere. So the fact that they are actually inviting us to some of these tables, I think is good, but they need to be including us at the beginning, not at the end, when they want to make sure that they have Native representation when they talk about it for their dog and pony shows. We're not like the sprinkles on the top of the cupcake, you know, that you add after the fact. It's still a very vanilla cupcake. So we want to, and not necessarily always be at their tables, but have spaces to make our own tables and have our own representation. So I think we're doing good on some of those. We're doing much better on some of those things. Obviously, there's always going to be room for improvement. Sorry, my phone is on. Geez, these people. So I think another thing that we're doing better is that we are getting some better relationships with local law enforcement. Like here in the Springs, we work really closely because we do provide direct service advocacy. We work very closely with CSPD and El Paso County Sheriff's Office. We are very privileged in that relationship. I know that is not the same for other law enforcement agencies. So if we could figure out ways to get more Native folks in front of law enforcement on a local level, the advocacy or the advocacy teams for law enforcement are usually pretty incredible to work with. CSPD advocacy, like if any of them were Native, I would hire them all to work for us in a heartbeat. They're amazing. They're on top of things. And I think if we worked a little bit more with some of the advocacy teams, we could probably get in a little bit better with some of the law enforcement. I know there's some pushback with law enforcement, interpreting that the alert is an optional investigative tool versus something that they are required to do. So we are having to push back with a lot of law enforcement agencies on actually getting them to issue. Sorry, my birds are freaking out over here today. But we need to figure out a way to improve that. And you know, we have law enforcement knowing that they need to put the eye in the dashboard, but not grasping that and so they're very consistent about doing that. They're just not consistent about then following up with CBI and actually getting that MIP, the MIPA alert issued. So, you know, there's baby steps, I think, for sure. I would like to have much more hands off, you know, when we're still having to give families scripts on what to tell law enforcement, when we're still having to follow up with law enforcement, when we're still having to very regularly contact CBI to help them with their data and the accuracy of that. And then also, hey, there's an alert that should be coming. If you don't hear from it, can you call law enforcement? Melissa and Audrey have been incredible in that. Like that relationship, the relationship that we have with Melissa and Audrey at CBI from our task force is something we are doing really well. They are reliable, they are passionate about this, and they are consistent in their responses to us. So we do definitely appreciate that. But yeah, I think there are some things going well, and then there's a lot of things that could be going way better.
Yeah, and you brought up reaching out to local law enforcement. I know CBI has been engaged in that work, particularly with the Colorado or the County Sheriffs of Colorado Association. You brought up some things that weren't going so well. Would you mind sharing some of those with me?
The thing that gets me the most right now is the MIPA. It should be a seamless process. We helped to draft this bill. We put this in place. It's passed. I don't want to talk about it anymore to make sure this is going out on all of these cases. And because the way, there's some language in the bill that says may, but there's also language in the bill that says will. There is that 8-hour requirement. And so when a Native person goes missing, they are required to notify CBI within 8 hours. Well, entering that I on the dashboard covers that notification, but that's not what's going to generate the alert going out. They have to actually call CBI or email them to get that to happen. That needs to be a better automated process in some way. Because if it's not going to be interpreted as a requirement, then as soon as the I goes in, then CBI needs to have some sort of alert on their end that it can just go. When my own son, who is currently missing, when we first filed his missing person report, it took 6 days for the MIPA to go out. And that's when I'm spoon feeding them the information. One of the other things that needs to be better with law enforcement is not releasing mugshots for the MIPAs. Most law enforcement agencies have the policy for external communication that it should not be a mugshot, that it should be a family photo or even a driver's license photo. So we have had to push back on that with a lot of agencies when families are insisting they submit the photos and the MIPA goes out with the mugshot anyway. That happens more often than not. Sometimes law enforcement not thinking that an unhoused relative or someone with an active warrant or someone with an active substance abuse disorder, that they could not be also a missing person. And so there's delays on alerts going out for that. So, there's some of this is specific to different agencies. Some of this is the bill itself. Our intent when the bill was written was that the alert would be mandatory. We had a lot of attorneys look at this. Raven and I are not attorneys. We are not lobbyists. We really hate doing this. So the fact that it wasn't caught by someone who didn't realize that one word is going to make something an optional tool versus something that's required, that's going to bring our people home. Because when we look at the average, they're coming home within a week of the alert going out. When the alerts are not going out, it can be months before these people are coming home. So I don't understand what the pushback is on why they don't want to do this when it's proven that it works.
Okay, thank you for that.
I can address some of that if
go ahead,
you'd like.
Kirby. Yeah.
Thanks, Monica. And I know we've talked about this in the past. I would just say that for the mandatory portion of that or optional, obviously we encourage them to be notify us as early as and as often as needed. The reason we left some, I don't want to use left some discretion to law enforcement in those search situations where they have a call for somebody who's been missing for an extended period of time. The purpose of the alert and the bulletin is for people to take action immediately. And if it's a situation where it's a year or two old information that somebody's being reported as missing, the bulletin or the alert system gives a little bit of discretion to that originating agency, instead of mandating that all all of the reported missing go out immediately. But we certainly encourage that for those that go missing, call as soon as they go missing. That helps us get the information out, gets people activated to go looking or to pay attention to what's going on around them. And so that rulemaking process kept that portion of optionality into law enforcement, if that helps at all.
And
Susan, did you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I just and thanks, Kirby. Thanks for that bit of background. I think it should be stated too how proactive your team has been, Kirby, in reaching out to law enforcement. I know we do have the post board training, but over the last several months, our team has been, I think, pretty aggressive in working with local law enforcement and just making sure that they're aware of the MIPA and how to move forward. That especially in our rural and underserved communities as well. So I think we're seeing some definite traction on the awareness piece. And as you can see by the number of alerts that have been issued, don't quote me, Kirby, but I think it's one of our highest alerts that have been issued throughout the year. So I think we are having tremendous success with it, but certainly are building on that.
And one thing I would add too, it might be part of that training component for the board and for the law enforcement members on the call to have that discussion and understand why an alert may or may not be issued. I think that would be probably helpful information, because I do think there is some level of confusion around why one agency may report something for an alert and why another may hold back or do more investigative work prior to requesting that information be sent out. So I think that would be a good topic to continue to discuss further, so we have a better understanding, not just as the board, but also as we talk with people outside of this space. Monica, do you have any follow-up on that?
Yeah, I think that's a two-way conversation. There needs to be also a conversation for law enforcement why there may be a delay in filing a missing person report when people have high-risk lifestyles, when they are chronically unhoused, when they have active warrants, so they are not interacting with other agencies. It's, you may not know until someone has a birthday where they normally would call and check in, and then you don't hear from them. There might be an annual an anniversary of some sort where that person checks in every single time and all of a sudden they don't, and then you can't find them. So, like when my son went missing in May, because he is unhoused and because he is an active addict, I wasn't expecting to see him every week, but the fact that he wasn't communicating with his sister for a prolonged period of time, we looked for him actively on our own, could not find him with any unhoused serving agencies. And so the alert was issued, a little bit later than what the.
Yeah. I'm gonna pass it to Raven. She's got her hand up, but Monica, I appreciate you sharing your story and advocating. It sounds like you've been doing this for a while, but this is the first time I'm hearing it. So I just want to thank you for sharing that story with us. And for me,
I think she lost her connection. So not just the MIPA, and I kind of want to go back to what Nancy said before, because I was nodding my head while she was talking, and she's very sweet, and I appreciate her kind words. The lack of education. So when I'm hearing about the MIPA, for example, and there are other areas in law enforcement that I would point to where we're having these heartburn issues, giving law enforcement the discretion to not issue an alert because maybe a person has been missing for a year. The lack of education around Indigenous issues, the historical violence that we have faced create unique issues for our community, which is not just underserved, but we're historically excluded. So in that rulemaking process for the MIPA, for other issues when we're going through these post trainings with law enforcement, what has been the norm for rulemaking in these other areas does not necessarily apply to our community, which is why we're sitting with this cluster of a crisis that we're facing today. So in terms of applying this to the board and the suggestions that need to come forward with CBI and the DCJ and CDPS, is again, like really understanding the crux of these issues for our community. I mean, we're averaging one Native person going missing a week. In the past 2 weeks, we've had 7 alerts go out, 2 of which were minors, they were children. So again, that MIPA, even if they've been missing for a year, like that may be a unique circumstance where it's really frustrating with law enforcement because of their lack of education will assign a number of derogatory bias against us as to why we don't deserve the alert or why we don't deserve that attention. So back to Nancy Ray's point, that educational component is paramount to actually addressing this crisis. And everyone's heard that soapbox from me before. You're new to it, Matt, so welcome. And that's all I have to say on that. Thanks.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate the feedback. I'm going to pivot here, and it's not because I want to move off this topic. I appreciate the direct and honest feedback. I'm pivoting because I want to get to the next part of the conversation, and that is as we start to move towards hiring the next director for OMMIR, what characteristics do you think are most important that we look for as we're starting this national search?
I'll speak to that. I think that we would like, I know that sometimes for Americans, gender is a odd topic, but I would prefer to see somebody who is female who has had this experience, mainly because who they're going to be interacting with and who represent the heads of families are still matrilineal. They're still matriarchies. It's mothers. And being able to have that rapport and to build that rapport is going to take that. Now, Aaron, he's my relative. He did a fabulous job with what he was handed in a very difficult situation on the handoff. And I really appreciate everything that he has done. And I would also say that I would like to see somebody from the Southern tribes represented, because there's often a misrepresentation of our Southern tribes here in Colorado, which is their origin lands. This would be the Pueblo, the Kiowa, this would be the Udo Azteca tribes, all 7, the Paiute, the Shoshone, who aren't even spoken about here as having a presence. It's important to us, not only that the person is from our tribes, but the gender is specific, because they are going to have to work with activists here in Colorado. And we're not activists because we want to have a title or we want to be seen. We are activists because we are the mothers who have children missing. We are the cousins of people who are found in rivers. And those stories are never published. You know, I'm not sure, Matt, yourself or Kirby or Miss Medina, if you know what your history here is in Colorado is. But to Raven's point, prior to the Americans' occupation in 1876, when this became a state from a territory, there were Spanish influences here. And those Spanish influences were running children and drugs from Mexico under the cave system. You guys know about El Chapo. He is light compared to what goes on. And, you know, there is a disconnect when we don't have someone we can trust to go and speak to, who actually we don't have to start at the beginning with that, because they already know that the drug and human trafficking are a continuation of occupation and residential occupation that is illegal. So, you know, we're not, when the young woman earlier, Lorenda, spoke about speaking to law enforcement, you know, we need the person that's representing this office to have the ability and the comfort to be able to speak with that and have that in their experience in their academia. But we also very much need somebody who is spiritually, to Christinia's point, spiritually and emotionally connected to the community. So I would suggest that as part of that process, whether you choose members of the advisory board or a subcommittee is formed from these members, that you seek their guidance prior to offering or extending an offer. That is our state-to-state right. That state-to-state right is not only tribal government sovereignty from a federally recognized tribe, that also implies and is stated and is encoded that we as individuals have that right. So I think that Again, although I love my cousin Aaron, and I'm really sorry that he's not here, and I'm really thankful he's going on for what's best for his family. When we are looking at who we are bringing in next, this committee should have a part, a say-so. They should come to as advisors to allow them to express what they see in those individual candidates and how they feel that person is going to work within our community. Don't do that. Here's what I'm going to say. Don't do it. Make a misstep. Don't include us. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to get another person who comes in for a short period of time who has to learn the community again. We see this in our organizations when we hire from outside of Denver community. You have to know the histories here. It's important to know Rick Waters at Denver Indian Center. It's important to know Carla, you know, who does the majority of the houselessness work and finding our relatives. You have to know where to go to find them. To Monica's point, we don't see our children who suffer under addiction as the problem. We see the problem as a lack of enforcement and a lack of ethics that has coursed through the culture of who we are occupied by. So it's very important that you listen to Christinia, that you listen to Lydia when it comes to Fort Collins. It's important that you listen to Monica and to Raven when it comes to this Colorado Springs and Southeastern area. It's important because they are the ones who will be supporting your efforts. It's not just that they're supporting finding our own children and our own people. These women have used your system. They have come to you as advisors and applied for this position to be of advice. So please utilize them in a good way. That would be my advice, Matt. That would be my advice, Kirby and Miss Medina.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Others?
I don't know if you guys can hear me. This is Lydia Lerma.
We can.
Okay, my apologies. I've had some technical difficulties with my my work computer, and I worked for Colorado State University. So one of the things that, and I've kind of been in and out of the conversation because of those technical difficulties, but I actually sit on the CSU Police Department Advisory Board. And I think it's really important, those outreach efforts with local law enforcement, that we have people like myself and like the members of this board sitting on those local law enforcement advisory boards, because that's where we make those really personal connections, where when we raise the issue of our missing relatives, they know the history, they know the reality of it, they know the challenges that we've had getting those announcements made, getting the word out, sharing that information throughout the Rocky Mountain states. I've worked on MMIW cases out of Montana. You know, we have Interstate 80, we have people being trafficked from Montana to the Dakotas, who knows, you know, along I-25 as well. So I think it's really important, and I don't know, I apologize for my ignorance as far as the State of Colorado Law Enforcement Association, but pulling in an association like that and having local law enforcement agencies reach out to their communities and say, hey, we have an advisory board. We need your input. We need you to share this historical information. We need you to share what's currently happening on a local level and on a, you know, currently. We have over 5,000 cases right now at the federal level of missing people. And that's just within our communities. So I think it's really, really important, just from a real grassroots effort, to reach out to those local law enforcement agencies and say, pull people within the communities. I'm not the only one in Fort Collins. We have a lot of people. We just had Indigenous Peoples Day on Monday, and we pulled people. We're available, and we're there, and we're willing to provide the input needed to make sure that this becomes a top priority for the state of Colorado.
That's great. Thank you. I won't make any jokes about CSU being a CU grad, but I appreciate that.
I'm also an Oregon grad, so there's that.
Oh,
I'm a
okay.
duck.
All right. All right. Miranda has a comment in the chat about state rep or senator to help bring visibility to the issue. I think so. One of the other things that I was thinking about as you all were talking as it relates to visibility is we are relaunching some of our public relations strategies, and Paula Vargas is on the call with us today. She's our PIO, and to the degree you all would be willing to help us message out about the communities, the tribal communities here in Colorado, we would love to get that message out. And so if there are some of you that would like to help with that, please reach out to me, and we will get working on that. What else, as we continue to move forward, what things would you all like to see us consider as we look for the next director of this office? What all would you like to see the focus be moving forward to continue to better serve the community? Raven?
Yeah, going back to my soapbox on education. So when director or former director Julian was hired, there were a lot of concerns from community in terms of his background being a career law enforcement agent. So one of the things I would like the hiring process to consider is the history and the current climate and relationship of law enforcement to Native people. It varies from region to region for hopefully what is an obvious reason. But it's something that is, again, unique to this community, and it can't be overstated, in my opinion. Nancy made a lot of great points about some of the qualities that person should have, just in terms of trauma-centered, victim-centered, survivor-centered approaches. And to Aaron's strengths, I think that was where he was kind of lacking and caused some harm along the way. So again, qualities that I don't know how you write those into a job posting, but should be considered as part of that nuance and that personality as you guys are vetting candidates.
No, I think that's exceptional feedback. That victim-centered approach is really important to me. It's something that was important to me when we were building out alternative responses to various issues in the community when I was at the local level, and so I greatly appreciate that feedback. Lydia?
One of the comments that I've had, and one of the things that I've noticed just in the Office of Equity and Inclusion through the City of Fort Collins, our people don't get paid enough to do this kind of work, and the kind of time and effort that it takes for people to work something at such a state level. I think they're highly underpaid. I was looking at the Office of Equity and Inclusion here at the City of Fort Collins, and I work as a consultant with them. I make more for them as a sourcing specialist at CSU. I make more than Julian made as a sourcing specialist. I'm a buyer. That's it. So resources, funding, we need to put our money where our mouth is, and we need to pay people to do this kind of work, because this is, as I've said in the past, I've worked missing and murdered Indigenous women cases. This is the most emotionally draining and demanding work I've ever done, and I've never been paid for it. My job at CSU pays my bills. My heart does this work because this is what I believe in. But if somebody's going to be hired to do this kind of work, they need to be compensated for it at a director level.
Yep. Nope, I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other thoughts along the line of qualities, things we should consider as we start this this process? Hearing none. Are there areas that we haven't focused on yet that are consistent with the legislation that you would like to see OMMIR focus on moving forward? Philip?
I'm sorry, I had to go to a different meet.
That's
Hold
okay.
on here. I'm sorry. I'm trying to handle some things at home, and I had to take care of, and then I had other meeting I had to run to. So I probably missed part of this conversation.
That's
And I
okay.
know
I
you're
appreciate you
asking
being
about.
here.
Yeah, thank you. I understand you were looking about certain qualities in the next person that comes through. And I'm not sure what everyone else had said, but I also believe that this position doesn't necessarily need to be someone only with public safety kind of background. I think this is a community type position in which someone who is culturally tied, if that's possible, it'll depend on who shows up and applies. But I think in this position, you need to look outside the box, and they can be able to relate with the police department is always good, but they're also here, I think, as a community representative, and that part's is equally important. And I appreciate everybody because I did hear some of this discussion, and as you can see here, the women of our communities are our biggest leaders and often are the ones who are most clear as to what needs to be said in a way that needs to be said. And I appreciate that of the women that are here and also women within our community. And I would take that into account. Sometimes this discussion isn't about making sure who we're talking to is they need to understand the emotions of these families. They need to know that these are big concerns. This has gone on too long in our history, and this is just a continuation of it until we really start to look at our system. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir. Any other comments on that or on things from the legislation that you would like to see at OMMIR have a greater level of focus on as we continue to move forward, Nancy?
Yeah, there's a component missing in terms of the investigations piece, and I'm not sure if that is new legislation. I'm not sure if that can be handled in policy, but during all of this, Monica's going through her own personal battles. I'm going through my personal battles. Everyone on this call, to Phil's point, we're all impacted, not just historically, but modernly and contemporarily by these things. And so having someone to go to that the community can trust, not just in this position of the CPS liaisonship towards the community, but the investigations, I don't know if that's a CBI level thing. I don't know if that is an investigator, to Raven and Monica's points, in local police or sheriff's office, which would be very expensive. I would think, we also have to contend with what is realistic in appropriations for some of these things, not only because of Tabor and the state, but also because of county codes and county laws and what they're able to afford. I myself live in a county without an active jail because the new legislation requires a medical doctor to be present. So we now in a county very close to the trafficking that happens, there's no jail. And so these kinds of things, we understand that those are realities, but we need somebody who can listen to the community, who can actively know where these investigative processes are going. I don't know if that's an appointed special investigator by some department, but without that piece, you're going to need two. You're going to need an investigator who actually can go out and listen, and you're going to need a liaison who can take those things and work with the families. It's irresponsible. It's irresponsible to not have those two positions in this endeavor, not only because of the numbers and the history, but also because by doing something like that, we start to see best practices develop, to Phil's point, that help us as an entire community in Colorado, regardless of our genetics. It helps us to get ahead if we're doing things better together. And I think overall, that's been the message that Governor Paulus has tried to get out, is that, we need to do better together. It is about together. Well, the only way it's going to be together to meet those needs realistically for missing people is to have somebody who does investigations and somebody as a family liaison. That's what I think. Lydia, what do you think?
I just added to the chat that I've actually been trained through the Public Agency Training Council on death and homicide investigations. I actually paid for that training myself. It was a week-long training, but I think that type of training should be available to other community leaders. And the role that I see myself in is a liaison between the families and law enforcement. Because of that training, I know what questions to ask. Because of that training, I know how to follow a case, and I know how to translate what's happening to those family members and say, okay, this is where we're at within the law enforcement process. This is what's happening. But again, that training is expensive. It's not always available. I actually got special admission into that training through the former director of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. He gave me an exception for the training because typically that type of training is reserved for law enforcement, but we could duplicate that kind of training here in the state of Colorado. That could happen here.
I appreciate that. I always worry about putting the onus on victims and advocates, but I see the benefit, right, of the education and the training, and so I see it two ways, right? The increasing the awareness and the cultural competency of those doing the work in the field from the law enforcement end, from victim services end, but then also finding ways that we can support you all who are doing such great work in your communities and working with these family members. So thank you for that. Any other thoughts along that line? All right. Hearing none, what I'd like to transition to is end this meeting with an opportunity for you all to share any current events, anything that's going on that you all think would be good for other members of the community or for those of us at the state to know that are happening. And so if you, or some good news to share that we can all celebrate. So I will open it up to that, please.
Hi, I have one. This is Misky. For the donation, they will be having a missing persons day November 4th. Everyone's welcome to come. I believe it starts at 10:30 and it's on Saturday.
Great, thank you. Any other bits of information for the good of the group?
So I recognize while what we're talking about, we're sitting here, we're very much talking about a struggle for Native people and our trauma and our history. One of the things I would encourage our non-Native partners on this call to do is maybe come out to a local powwow. For example, there's going to be one here at the end of the month, so that just as much as you're seeing our struggles, you can come out and see our beauty and our success and our celebration and our culture, to kind of also give you that understanding of some of the finer aspects of the Native life. So I'm happy to share some of those flyers as those events come up. And I think it would be a great opportunity for you guys to see the reasons why we celebrate and the reasons why we do this work, so that every day is like a powwow for us and we're thriving instead of just surviving.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Raven. And that was how I was going to kind of end this call. But I'll put a plug here. If you all will have me in your space, I would love to be involved in any activities or any events, any powwows, whatever the case may be. So please reach out if you feel comfortable doing so. I would love to. I would love to join you. Lydia, did you have something to add?
I just posted in the chat that October 21st, CSU is hosting our annual powwow, so you all are welcome to join us.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Nancy?
Matt, I think it would be really good if you did come to that missing persons day.
I just had closing.
And they'll have emergency management out there, which is in charge of sending out the text alerts when someone goes missing on our res. And NamUs will be there, a representative from CODIS, and just meeting the people. That would be really good for you to be out there. So if you need any more information, you can go to, if you're on Facebook, Navajo Navajo Police Department has all that info on there. They have their flyer up already. If not, you can email me and I'll give you some more information. Thank you.
No, I think that's great. Thank you so much. This will age me slightly, but I was one of the Colorado representatives that helped launch NamUs a few years ago. So that was quite a while ago. But but anyways, I'm very familiar with the program. It's a great program. So, Nancy.
Just in closing, I wanted to thank you, Matt and Kirby. We know that when we speak to you, we are carrying very serious tones about the heaviness of the loads that we have and the lack of capacity, to Lydia's point, to Phil's point, carrying this for generations. It's heavy, it's really heavy. And we know that, you're not the people that are out. We hope not anyway, because sometimes that happens, but we hope that you're not the people out there, contributing to that issue, right? We have to also reach back to you as a relative in this circle. And I would advise that the more you make yourself open, honest, and humble, the way that you've done today, Matt, in listening and trying to process these things, Kirby, we appreciate you. At this point in juncture in time, with climate change, with 2 wars going on, with the falling of the federal rating system, with lots of debt and increased pressure in Congress, there are a lot of concerns we're all carrying. We don't, we want you to know that we acknowledge that too, that you're coming to this also carrying things. And one of the practices is not to burden each other, but to lighten the loads by sharing what we know and by making room for mistakes, as we get to know each other in this kinship. But my best advice to you is, again, to Christinia's point and to your offering, meet with these women. I'm probably one that you won't meet with. My capacity is always very stretched, especially at this juncture. But I would say the best thing you could do is to go have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, be in Colorado Springs with the Colorado Springs community, with the task force, understand and see our families, see us. We wear red so that Creator will see us and hear our prayers. And we're asking you, Matt and Kirby, to do the same. See us. See us for the noble family bloodlines that remain. See us for the thousands of years of investigative scientific processes in our logic. See us for the exquisite ability of love beyond a mother's loss, a mother's concern, that you see Monica Snowbird showing up. See it in Raven, who fights for everyone. See us. That's all we're asking. Come be part of us and get to know us for who we really are. I guarantee you will learn so much. I guarantee you will become a better human being as a result. And I can tell you that I love each and every member of this community, whether we know exactly where they're at or whether we're still looking for them. And every member of this community is family to us. We are all related by bloodlines. So when Monica's son is missing, every day we're looking, every day we're praying, every day. That is on my heart and mind. And I wake up with that and I go to sleep with it. So understand that we may be 262 plus nations, but at the heart of who we are, it is about love. It is about family. And the biggest thing that this occupation has taken away from us is the safety that we created in our families. So thank you for helping us. Thank you for hearing me today. Thank you for these considerations. And I'm about 4 to 6 weeks out right now on appointments. But if you have time and you would like to have a personal conversation via Zoom, I will try to fit that in. But I would say that Monica and Raven and Lydia are really great contacts, as well as Phil, and I personally recommended them. I personally recommended them because we all work together in other parts of the community, and you will learn a lot by listening to Phil with the children, by listening to Monica and Raven with the communities, by listening to Lydia with her real experience with law enforcement and her real investigations. So thank you for today. Thank you for being willing to be here in this circle. And thank you for the work that you will continue to do, which is not easy.
Well, I appreciate the words. I think what I hope that you find that I'm available. I want to be there. I want to listen, and I want to learn from you. I'll leave fixing Congress to Kirby, but but no, I really appreciate that. And I think Adrian had her hand up, wanted to say something.
I just wanted to let everyone know that these events, as they're coming up, please feel free to send them to me or text them to me. I'm happy to share them with the group as well as with DCJ staff in the interim while we're working on filling the director's position. I'm not going anywhere, so you can always reach out to me.
And you all know this already, but Adrian is phenomenal. We are incredibly fortunate to have her as part of the DCJ team, and she better not be going anywhere. So, thank you so much, Adrian, for all your work in this space, and I know the great work that you'll continue to do. And does anyone else have any last comments, concerns, questions before we wrap up? Lydia?
I just had a question about, are all of our campus law enforcement agencies connected to this office?
Are the well, you would have to define for me what you mean by connected, but what I would say is it's really important to me that I know CBI is already engaged in this work of reaching out and working with the Colorado Chiefs of Police Association, the County Sheriffs of Colorado. It's really important to me too that the OMMIR is actively engaged in those spaces as well with our campus law enforcement agencies, because we want to get the word out. We want to be a resource for the state, and we want people to feel like they are prepared if they unfortunately have to deal with an issue related to one of these cases. And so that's my hope. And to the degree you can help make those connections at CSU with the campus police there, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm actually drafting a message right now to Chief Callahan, so I'm really excited about engaging him and seeing how we can get Northern Colorado law enforcement more connected with our community.
Great, thank you so much. Any other comments? All right, hearing none, I will just say again, thank you for your time, for your thoughts, for your energy, and for doing this important work. I really look forward to continuing to working with this group. And if anyone ever wants to reach out, have a conversation, have a cup of coffee, just let me know. I would love to make time for that. So take care. Let us know if you need anything, and we will be in touch soon, okay?
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.